They're not ready yet.
Good evening. I'm Stan Mark, Vice Chair of Class Act HR 73, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's Toolbox seminar entitled Plan Giving. Many nonprofits derive almost all their funds from cash gifts. Tonight, our expert presenters, Julie and Nick Sakalariadis, will discuss alternative fundraising vehicles that can enhance charitable giving and are readily available options for donors. This webinar is being recorded, and we will notify you by mail when the video is posted to the Class Act website. In addition, we will be sending out a brief survey following the presentation. Before we begin, here are some of the housekeeping points. First, we ask that you stay muted during the presentation. Second, the talk will last approximately 25 to 30 minutes. Third, we will follow with a 15 to 20-minute Q&A, so please hold your questions until then. How the Q&A will work. Please use the raise hand function. I will then invite individuals by name to unmute and ask a question. For this event, a question is one sentence that ends with a question mark. Please try to limit unnecessary commentary. And we are scheduled to end by 8 p.m. It is now my pleasure to introduce Julie and Nick. Julie graduated from Radcliffe College in 1978 and Columbia Business School in 1983. She worked at Chase Manhattan Bank for 3 years before business school and at McKinsey & Company for 5 years. Since then, she has been involved in several nonprofits. Class of 78 Harvard College Fund, co-chair of the John Harvard Society, the New York Botanical Garden, a board member for 30 years, past vice chair of the board, past chair of strategic planning, science and education committees, currently co-chair with husband Nick of the Perennial Society of Plan Giving, member of the Garden Club of East Hampton, past president, and chair of the Garden Club of America's Awards Committee. Nick is the executive chairman of the Dayton Dragons, a minor league affiliate of the Cincinnati Reds baseball team. The Dragons have had the longest consecutive sellout streak in the history of American sports, lasting 23 years. Prior to that, Nick had a 35-year career in investment banking at Citigroup-related companies. He currently serves on the Harvard College Fund Executive Committee, where he was a former co-chair. He is co-chair of the John Harvard Society, fundraising co-chair of Harvard College class of 1973, fundraising co-chair of the Harvard Law School class of 1977, and a member of the Major Gifts Committee of the Harvard Business School class of 1977. He has also served on the alumni board of HBS, is a member of the Harvard Alumni Association's Crimson Society. He has also served in board positions with the New York Botanical Garden, Phoenix Country Day School, Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church, and the American Board of Athens College. Quite impressive resumes. So Nick and Julie, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. So are the slides available, Diana?
Yep, 1 second.
All right. Thank you so much. Great. And could we go to the next slide, please? So briefly tonight, we're going to cover the following areas. Gifts of, and these are the non-cash gifts, appreciated securities and other non-cash assets. In addition, you may be receiving donor advised funds gifts, and these are typically annual giving kinds of things that you may have already encountered. you may not. More important and large gifts tend to be possibilities with IRAs and life income gifts and bequests. And next slide, please. Nick, over to you.
Yeah, and welcome to everybody, and especially classmates from 1973. Thank you for having us on tonight. And we're here to kind of just share some ideas at a top level in terms of figuring out how to maximize the amount of money that can come to your charity while minimizing the pain to the donor who's giving the gift. And I think the first thing to do is to kind of understand the landscape. And broadly speaking, we've kind of diagnosed that there are 4 ways to support charities. So number 1 is give stuff outright. This is what we're most familiar with, and it's generally cash, but it can also be gifts from your retirement account. It can be donor advised fund distributions, and it can be appreciated assets. And then going down this slide to the bottom left, there are also these are a little more complex. They might not be relevant for smaller size charities, but they're worthwhile knowing about in terms of their existence. And the bottom left talks about a so-called life income gift, where you make a gift of any of the above items. The donor receives income for life or for a specified period. And at the passing of the donor or at a specified date, the amount of money that's been accumulating in the investment goes to the charity. That's a life income gift. And in the bottom right, it's kind of the inverse. The donor makes a gift. The charity gets the income for, let's say, 20 years or the life of the donor, and then the principal returns to the family or another, beneficiary. And both of these receive various amounts of charitable deductions when they are given. And finally, going up, I guess I've gone counterclockwise to the upper right. The other way to give, and it's a major source of giving, is through bequests. In other words, through your will or through trusts that are set up, or even through beneficiary designations. So for instance, all of us who have an IRA account, buried in the paperwork somewhere is that if the funds have not been used up during one's lifetime, the balance goes to X, typically, a family member, but it could be a charity. So again, you can give the money outright. You can give the gift and keep the income, and then the gift goes to the charity when you pass away. Going to the bottom right, you can give the gift, the charity gets the income, and then the corpus returns to the family or the beneficiaries at the end. And finally, upper right, rather, you give through wills, trusts, and beneficiary designations on retirement accounts. So if you could go to the next slide. And by the way, this again is a way to meet the donor where they are. Sometimes they don't want to give the cash. Sometimes they want to give it through their estate in the future. And sometimes they want some income but don't need the principal. Sometimes it's the inverse. And having conversations, staying close to the donors, and just giving them the optionality of how to give may encourage them to give a net, bigger gift. So one of the classic tools that's available in all of these flavors is to, Julie, let me turn this one over to you.
So just taking a bit of a deeper dive into gifts of appreciated securities and assets. It's important to know that if the donor makes the gift directly from their brokerage account to the charity, they have what can be very significant tax savings. So let's say they agreed to give you $5,000 and they look at the stocks in their brokerage account and realize they have something sitting in there that they bought for $1,000, but it's worth $5,000 today. They could theoretically call their broker and say, sell that security and send me the money, and then write you a check and send it to you. They will then have made a gift to you of $5,000, but they're going to owe capital gains taxes on the difference, the $4,000. And that can be significant. It can be 15 to 20% at the federal level, and then depending on the state you live in, up to 40% in a high tax state such as New York or California. So what you want to do here is you want to slow your donor down and say, have you thought about whether you have any securities that have appreciated in value? And perhaps it would be easier if I sent you instructions for how to make that donation directly from your brokerage account to my account. And if they do that, they pay none of those capital gains taxes. So you've just saved them the taxes on the $4,000, which might be over $1,500 or $1,700. They would be a very grateful donor now because you saved them money. They might even say, oh, in that case, I'll make a bigger gift to you. So on to the next slide. And Nick, it's back to you.
Sure. So this is just to alert you, many of you know, right, that the biggest philanthropic trend over the last 10, 15 years is the proliferation of so-called donor advised funds. So excuse me for those of you who already know, but just to make sure we level up with everybody in the audience. So what the donor advised fund is, and it can be done in a kind of a relatively small amount, like $5,000, even less, with somebody like Fidelity. So what you do is, let's say it's $5,000. You give the $5,000 to Fidelity, you get an immediate tax deduction, and that fund is advised by the donor on which charity will receive the funds and when they will receive it. So technically, while in example, Fidelity has authority to decide all of that, they are crazy to decide without the donor telling them what to do because somebody will go to another donor advised fund. So they have the Fidelity has the legal right, but the practical impact is the donor gets to decide where the money goes. So why is this important? It's important because many people, small business owners, professional folks, et cetera, may have a year where they have an, kind of an extra amount of income. They want to make a charitable gift to take advantage of the deduction, but they're not sure to what charity they want the money sent. So you kind of give Fidelity the 5 or the 10 or the $100,000. They stockpile it, and then it accumulates, by the way, and then over time, you can distribute it out to the donors of your choice. So the other thing you can do on the donor advised fund is make a recommendation on who gets it when you pass away, who is the recommended ultimate, beneficiary. So this is a very powerful tool for donors, and your solicitors at your charity just need to kind of have their head in the game that this exists. And if somebody, for instance, a line of conversation could be if somebody says, gee, I really don't have any extra money to give right now, you can check and ask, well, by any chance, do you have a donor advised fund? Could you make a gift out of that? One very practical thing to notice, a lot of charities, you'll get a notice that Fidelity has sent you $3,000 contribution, but they don't bother to tell you which donor advised that money come to you. So just as a little factor, if you ever do solicit a donor advised fund contribution, make sure to nudge the donor to let you know that a DAF distribution is coming your way, so you're able to properly, thank them and account for them. And obviously, the other point on this page is distribution, from foundations. To the extent you are lucky enough to get one of a major or a minor foundation that can deliver funds to assist you on your charitable doings and throwings. Okay.
There
Next-
are, let me jump in a minute, Nick. There are people who set up family foundations that you may not have found in searching for foundations that would be likely to give to you. But the donor will likely tell you that.
Yep. Okay, next slide, please. So this is really low-hanging fruit for people of our age as donors. If people of our age are being solicited, which they will be, by your charities. This is the concept of giving, checking with the donor as to whether they would like to give through a qualified charitable distribution from their IRA. And for those of you who don't know, the way this works is this is available to all donors age 70 and a half and older, and you can give up to $108,000 per calendar year to charities, and it completely avoids income tax, on the distribution. So as a brief reminder, right, when we accumulate money in our IRAs over 50 years, that money accumulates, tax-free. When we get to, the 70s, we are hit with so-called RMDs, required minimum distributions, and we have to start taking some of that money out and finally paying the income tax on it. Well, this qualified charitable distribution is a way around it, and that Congress has encouraged charitable giving. And instead of paying income tax when you're required to face up to required minimum distributions in your 70s, and you finally pay the income tax that's been accumulating over your lifetime, you can instead give this money directly to charity. So if you're going to give to charity, these are probably the very first dollars that should go to charity, and a solicitor should have at his or her fingertips the notion of nudging the donor to see if they would like to make, a qualified charitable distribution. So it's got a huge impact. So for instance, if you, let's say, had a required minimum distribution of $100,000, taxes in a high tax state, income taxes could probably be more than 37%. So at the end of the day, you'd have 63, you pull it out of your IRA, you pay taxes on it, you've got 63,000 left that you can give out as a charitable gift. Alternatively, you directly transfer it from the IRA by virtue of this qualified charitable distribution, and the entire amount goes tax-free to the IRA, to the charity. So if you think about it, you've accumulated, in this example in the bottom right, $100,000 over the course of your lifetime that's available that 1 year. You've avoided paying income tax on it for 50 years as it's accumulated. And now you don't ever have to pay income tax on it to the extent you give it to charity rather than use it yourself. And so to the extent you are giving to charity, these should be the first dollars that are used, and you should have this at your fingertips as a solicitor in terms of a very cost-effective device to help out your donors.
And Nick, I just want to jump in here. This is as easy for the donor as sending instructions to your broker by email to please transfer the money from this IRA directly to the New York Botanical Garden, and then all the information about where to direct it. So it's very, very simple.
And Julie, I'm sure you meant Harvard, right?
Oh, well, yes. Sorry, honey.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just to let you know that this stuff exists. It's probably a little too complicated for a small startup charity, but you should just know that these vehicles are there. So this is kind of a life income gift, right? So you make a gift to charity, you receive an immediate deduction that's equal to the present value of the gift, of the future gift. You receive income payments for life, and they can be structured to be a fixed term. And at the end of your life, again, the remainder of the gift is used to support your philanthropic charity. And the flavors on the right are just different flavors of this, whereby the principal at the end can go when you pass. It can go, let's say you can fix it for 20 years. You can juggle it so that you get a fixed amount of income, no matter how the principal is behaving. You can structure it so that you get a percentage of the principal if you want to gamble on the fact that it should, appreciate over time. So there are many ways to structure it, but the bottom line is, the gift to charity triggers an immediate income tax deduction. You get the income off the principal during a specified period of time, and the remainder reverts to your philanthropy of choice. Again, probably a little too complicated for a small startup, kind of charity, but as you grow in scale and size, it can be worth, working with an attorney if your donor has any particular inclination to do this. And again, it's a way, if you think about it, it's someone who says, there's think of the spectrum here. Someone who can just give the cash day one or the value day one. Someone else at the other extreme may say, the other end of the spectrum may say, you know what, I am concerned about making sure I have money to get me through to the end of my life. So I will give my favorite charity money, but it comes out of my state when I die. And maybe it's set at either a fixed amount that you're comfortable with or a percentage of the estate when you die. And then the middle ground is this, where you're going to give the gift to the charity when you die at the end, but while you're living, you make income off of the principal. So this is kind of a hybrid gift between those two extremes of giving the money right now or only giving it, when you pass away. Okay.
Slide.
Over to you, Julie.
And then, of course, there's some other very simple ways for people to give. They can write a provision into their will that says that when they die, the estate will make an outright gift to you of X amount of dollars. And sometimes that's taken off the top, and sometimes it's, if there's enough left over, it'll come, which is why it's revocable. But also an interesting option for donors to consider is making a charity a beneficiary of their life insurance policy, or their IRA, or their donor advised fund. And I used to work with a guy at the New York Botanical Garden who was up in arms about donor advised funds because people start them not knowing where they want the money to go. And they often forget to go back to Fidelity and say, okay, I now know that I want all of it to go to X charity when I die if I haven't distributed the funds myself. So if you're having a conversation with a donor who's over the age of 70 and they have a donor advised fund or whatever, you can start talking to them about have you designated a residuary beneficiary for your DAF funds if you die? And they should then be at a point in their life where they now can make the decision and have some time to think about it. And other charities may not have asked them about that. So you could get there first. Ditto with life insurance policies and retirement accounts. And so, next slide. So next steps, and Nick and I kind of hashed this out, so you should jump in with me. But as a nonprofit, you might want to have an estate lawyer who can advise you and who you can refer potential donors to. You should probably develop a checklist for any of your solicitors of things to talk to their donors about. And of course, you're going to be, your solicitors will be the judge of how comfortable they are bringing these issues up with possible donors. But in most cases, my guess is if you're going to sit down and have these meetings, you're going to want to do them face to face. and you're going to want to know your larger donors fairly intimately, which my guess is you do. And so when they make a commitment, they say, I want to give you, we were at a benefit last night. And if you can believe it, they are auctioning off gifts of $25,000 at this dinner, and they got 3 people. It was a very nice theater group. And then it went on down from there. But one would hope that maybe today the dust is settled, that you would call those people back and said, thank you so much for agreeing to do that. If you thought about whether you have appreciated securities you could give instead and save yourself some money on taxes, or maybe you could go through this list. Maybe you have other ways you want to do it and save some money, and we'll just send you a list to look at. But these are good things to sort of have in your quill to think about bringing up with donors. Um, and then we just wanted to say that for this kind of conversation, in-person meetings are worth their weight in gold. When I'm soliciting classmates for Harvard, these are, oftentimes if you do it by phone, which is increasingly not the way it's done, people do it by email. But even if you're doing it by phone, people want to get off the phone quickly. And this is something that you could put into a follow-up email or ask for a follow-up conversation. With your bigger donors, you're going to be meeting with them in person from time to time, and I would put this on the agenda. And then finally, fundraising is fundraising. So stay in touch, make sure you have those in-person meetings. Those are really worthwhile. Nick, what do you want to add?
I want to add that the charity fundraiser you spoke about last night was the Classic Stage Company in New York, which honored none other than Therese Steiner, Class Act's own Therese Steiner. Hundreds of people giving her rousing ovations for her decades of leadership and contributions to this charity. So,
Classic Stage Company.
Classic Stage Company.
Right.
So hooray, hooray, Therese. Okay. I think we can go double check to see if there are any questions or concerns that we can try to field or at least make note of and forward on to other experts as required.
We have a small enough group, you can just raise your hand and I'll identify you or I'll call on you.
We may call on you.
That's a good way. Look, why don't you start it off, Julie and Nick? Ask the audience the questions.
Well, I want to ask Yo Chang a question. Are you with us, Yo Chang? Can you take your
Please
video?
unmute.
I'm here.
Great. So I'm curious to know, for you and the Little Orchestra Society, how often have any of these instruments come up, and do you think they might be useful to you going forward?
Oh, definitely going forward. I've been overworked and not have these things set up, so I probably need help getting these set up. Like let's say uh, uh, an account for securities and such. We don't have that set up. So obviously I can't solicit people to donate to our account because I don't have a Merrill Lynch account or whatever. But at some point, if I have that done, that would be, it sounds very helpful. So perhaps we could meet over tea or coffee at one point and you can teach me some things.
So interestingly, when you donate securities to Harvard, they sell it immediately.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so I believe I'm wondering if there's a way for you to do it without having a securities account because it can be sold immediately and cash goes into your account. So that'd be something you might want to, just grabbing a pen and writing myself notes about this, that you might want to speak to your banker about and see if somebody wanted to give me securities, how could we make that happen?
Right. Okay. Well,
And
that's a great idea.
You would want to, most institutions, when they receive a gift of securities, they sell it immediately. They have an investment policy, et cetera, et cetera. So they're not looking to hold on to whatever security landed in their portfolio because that's not really what they're in the business of doing.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, true, but I just I was hesitant to delve into another area that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
So,
It's probably worth getting your own brokerage account and just making it easy for donors to sell, send stock directly to the brokerage account.
Yeah, I can speak to my financial advisor and ask them how to set one up, and that'll
Yeah.
be fun. Yeah,
They can now do it with DocuSign and so forth.
great,
It'll take
Awesome.
less than 3 months.
great. I'm eager always to be learning.
Well, that provides a good question. After we get off the call tonight, I go to my desk tomorrow as a nonprofit, a small nonprofit. What do I do? Do I call my donor? Do I call a lawyer? How do I get started? What steps should I be taking?
Exactly.
Well,
So, yeah, Nick,
go ahead, Julie. Go ahead.
oh, no, you start.
Look, I think let me just are we sending these slides out to everybody, Stan?
Yes, the slides will be sent out, and within a week, the whole presentation will be on our website. So it's a refresher course, or if somebody couldn't make it tonight, they can see it for the first time next
Okay,
week.
let's go back to the last slide of the presentation, please.
1 second. Let me pull it back up.
And there's a couple questions right after this slide.
Okay.
Okay.
But for memory, the first thing on the slide, like, what do you do tomorrow, right?
Right.
Try to get, I think, an estate lawyer to be available. If you don't have one, find one to be available, and ideally see if they'll do it on a charitable basis.
Mhm.
To be on the alert, to be the person that'll help you execute kind of on all of these things. And then again, if you look at this list, I think with that attorney, you can come up with your own handcrafted, list of what kinds of things you should be asking your donors. And we have some suggestions, but your estate attorney may guide you otherwise. And most importantly, I think you have to figure out who in the organization, does this. So you don't have to be an expert on any of this stuff, but you just need to be able to kind of understand conceptually what the stuff is so that you can know when to ask it and then be able to refer that donor to your lawyer to execute on it and make it happen. So I would say tomorrow morning, start thinking about, the lawyer. As has been mentioned, I'd probably make sure you have a brokerage account so you can receive stock. And I think come up with your estate lawyer with a checklist of questions that you should be asking the right donors. Again, if they're $100 contributions, it's not worth the brain damage, right, to do this. But when you're trying to get those $5,000, $10,000, types of contributions, or even north of that, being able to give the donor options is something I think that the donor will be grateful for and can maybe optimize the amount they give. So, for instance, Julie talked about the appreciated securities. In one case, you sold the stock, you gave the cash, and it caused you a bunch of taxes. Well, if you save the taxes, maybe you get that donor to give you what he was planning to do to begin with, plus the taxes that he would have saved. So these are some of the things that I think, focus on. Julie, you want to add anything to that?
I would just say, for gifts from an IRA, I don't think you need a securities account. So if you have a donor who's at that age and you're talking to them about making a gift of, say, 5,000 and higher, you might say to them, any chance you have an IRA and you've got to make, you've reached the age where you've got a mandatory distribution. Would you consider donating part of that to us, part or all? Especially if they're talking about wanting to give us a bigger amount.
Yeah. Of this list, I think for the I think a small charity and so forth. I think probably A and B are the low-hanging fruit where you can make it as easy as possible and as tax efficient as possible for a donor to help your charity, right? I mean, it's crazy to give cash if the donor has appreciated securities because of the tax savings. It's crazy to give any contribution without starting with money that you can shovel out of your IRA on a tax-free basis. And it's like a great win. The donor gets to completely avoid income taxes on the money he or she has accumulated over 50 years. So these are maybe two top things that should be, top of mind for, let's say, an intermediate type donor. And I put number 3 on this list is putting, and this would be for larger gifts, but it would be for people trying to include your charity in their estate planning.
One thing we didn't mention was on the organization's website. There's usually a donate button. Would you explicitly put out some of this information so somebody coming to the website learns that it's available?
It's not a bad idea, Stan.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So that's another step you could take. I have 3 questions. I assume it's Lorraine Chickering had her hand up first. It says Lori Chick.
It is I am at a crossroads. I have estate documents and I want to change them. And in the ones that are now in effect, Harvard would have gotten a lot of my money. Then they pissed me off. So my question is, I need to find a new estate lawyer to help me reframe my documents, and I don't know how to find the right person. If there's any advice any of you have about how I should look for the next lawyer, I would be grateful.
Okay. Lorraine, I can get back to you. I have a couple people that I could recommend.
I would really appreciate that. And it's so good to see your face. Just
Yeah, it's been a while since Winthrop House.
Indeed.
Patty, you're up next.
Wait, before we go,
Oh,
let me just say, wearing my Harvard volunteer hat on, if you're set in your mind, Stan will certainly help you move. If there are questions that can be allayed, if there's any kind of open mind on this, feel free to call me to talk about Harvard and what your problems with Harvard are. We all have some problems with Harvard, but many of us conclude that net, it's still a very worthy cause. So
I would look forward to that conversation. If you could put your contact information into the text or something, I would appreciate it.
Diana, would you give her my email, please? And
Yeah,
so
sure.
make sure I don't screw up the thing. So
okay, great.
Dan, wait 48 hours before you help her
Okay.
not contribute to Harvard.
Okay, I will. Patty,
I just have a concrete question. When you say the donations from the IRA, the required distribution, is that any kind of retirement account that has required distribution? Or just IRAs?
No, I believe it's everything.
Okay. Because even the ones that are pre-tax.
Like Roth? No, you found the loophole.
yeah.
Okay, so I had a big argument with my brother about this. I said, I have to take the money. I'm not going to just give it away. I'm going to have to pay anyway because it's not an IRA. So,
Yep.
okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Ellen,
Thanks. I have a question from the point of view of a small nonprofit. Do you have any thoughts about trading up small donors into donors using these vehicles. In other words, we do email campaigns. We have a little box at the bottom of the message that says, we accept gifts of appreciated securities and EFTs from donor advised funds. You know, send us a message if you need more information. But we don't segment our donors at this level by whether they're over 70 years old or what their potential wealth is or anything. Um, how, how do you make that first transition from somebody giving you $100, $500 to somebody using these vehicles?
Well, I'll give an initial answer and then let Nick jump in. I mean, the old phrase, which has been kicked around in the fundraising world forever, is that fundraising is friend raising. And you need to find a way to start meeting these people in person so that you have a chance to have a face-to-face conversation with them and start to build up the kind of identity between yourself and them. You know, we get a lot of solicitations in the mail, and there are many things that I'll write a small check to, but I know what my priorities are, and I'm probably not going to be willing to go up to another level, but I'd be a pretty steady donor at the $200 level. Um, so that's where, you know, but if you get to know them and they begin to really care about you, then you start to move up the priority list. So it's hard to do it without a personal touch.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of institutions will have, let's say, special events at, you know, maybe it's your $100 or $200 donor or whatever. You'll have to decide where the cut is, but you have a special event, make it a Zoom event if nothing else. But, you know, if a lot of the donors are local, have a dinner or have a museum tour or go to a baseball game, you know, any one of those little activities that makes them feel part of the community. And it gives you kind of a soft way of getting to know them better and maybe getting to have a broader sense of, you know, kind of what their capacities for giving are, and therefore whether one of these other instruments, you know, helps out.
That's a great idea. We have a board member with season tickets to the Celtics and the Sox. We
Oh,
should look for our Boston
yeah,
donors.
that's
Thank you.
gold. That's gold. Even as a New York fan, that's still gold for that community.
But let me just jump in. If you can create an event that's around what your nonprofit does, so let's say that you're a food bank. So, you know, maybe it's an event where donors are invited to come on a day when the food bank is active to sort of see what the operation is like, and you turn that into a party. So you may want to think about, you know, yes, you're going to have a great time at the ballpark. It gives you a chance to talk to them and get to know them, or the Celtics. Um, but also think about getting them really deeply enmeshed in the cause that you're fighting for.
Super. Any more questions? Julie and Nick, do you have any questions for the audience? Any more?
I'll throw out another idea. The first nonprofit I ever got involved with was a little tiny one called the Playground Project on the Upper West Side, and we raised money to improve a playground in Riverside Park. And I like to write, so I did a newsletter every quarter, and the donations started coming in, and people would tell me, oh, we had so much fun reading about the emergency phone that's going to be installed, or we couldn't, you know, we thought it was really neat to learn about the man who's been the caretaker at that playground for all these years. So newsletters are also, and many of, you know, we're talking to a really educated group here who know how to write newsletters, and people read them. You know, newsletters are really a good way to reach people.
And now you can do it by email, which wasn't possible in the day, right? So there's a real, you know, multiplier effect here and ease of communication.
I have a little,
Go ahead.
I just was going to say that I have a patient who I just referred to Ellen's charity, and it was really successful. So I've been very happy to be able to talk about the Coal Resource Center, which I've given a teeny bit of money to, but I'm also endorsing it.
Thank you, Patty. That's great. Yeah, when Julie mentioned participating, we do peer mental health support for people who are usually in some kind of crisis. So it's not an experience to share with donors.
Ah,
And we have the further challenge that we can't tell stories with people other than anonymously. People, for confidentiality reasons, they don't want to disclose their individual stories. So there's some
Right,
constraints around what we do.
right.
in
But
terms
I
of
don't think I
fundraising.
revealed very much.
Well, then you're back to the Celtics and the Red Sox, where New
Exactly.
York
Right.
fans will
Yeah.
create enough mental
Right,
challenges that we could become customers.
right. Oh, there are probably a lot of cool things that grow on the McLean campus where it's located. So you can make a mix with the garden.
there you go.
Again, Julie and Nick, thank you for such an informative presentation. Again, the video from this event will be posted on our website. It'll take about a week. You will receive an email when this happens, along with a brief evaluation form. Please feel free to share the link with others. Our next Meet Our Bridges webinar will be Tuesday, December 9th with Ron Diekman, founder and executive director of Kids Care Everywhere, a global healthcare organization. Please watch for emails with details of all our upcoming events. If you have any ideas for topics for future webinars, or you would like to volunteer as a presenter or suggest a presenter, please email us at classacthr73@gmail.com. We would love to partner with other class acts and alums. This concludes tonight's presentation, and I wanted to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. See you next time.
Thanks,
And the
everybody.
same
Happy
back
Thanksgiving.
at ya.
Yeah.
Thanks for all
Thank
the
you.
nice things you're all doing.